everyone. I'd like to welcome you to a brand new show right here on WLCS TV 20. It's a show we're going to call Supe Talk, and it's an opportunity for you to check in with what's going on with your Lorain City Schools. I'm Don Vincent, one of the play-by-play voices on the Cool Cat 1380 and WOBL, a couple local radio stations here. I'm also involved with some community things, including the Lorain International Association. But I'd like to introduce the man that the show's pretty much about, as well as the rest of the schools, Tom Tucker. Mr. Tucker, excited about the opportunity here to do Supe Talk with you and to talk about the Lorain City Schools.
Me too. It's an opportunity. It was that they approached me and said, "Hey, how would you like to do a TV show and talk to some of the folks out there and have them have questions, and we'll see where it goes and the comments and the questions." We've got a general outline of what we'd like to do, but depending on what we get, we may alter the show as we go.
Oh, absolutely. And Mr. Tucker, you know, as we talk about the show and where we want to go, there are going to be opportunities for everyone out there to submit questions and comments and to kind of help us shape the show, but it's not all going to be just sitting in an office chatting. I mean, there's a lot more to the schools, obviously, than you and I sitting in an office.
Absolutely. What we want to do for the first time is just talk generally about some things that are going on, but our intention is to go into the buildings and let people actually see, interview some of the teachers, some of the principals, talk to some of the students, see some of the activities, because everybody has a perception of what's going on, and then there's the reality, and to actually see it on TV might be very, very good to see what we're doing and actually what's happening in action in our buildings.
I don't have any doubt about that. I've had the opportunity to be in some of your buildings, and I've always seen some great things. And we talked before, I'm a Lorain guy, Lorain schools, my children are Lorain schools. I mean, we have the opportunity and great opportunities right here in our school system for our children to be successful as they move forward.
We have a lot going on, a lot of opportunities, and we're expanding some of those opportunities. Part of my job is to do the positives on those and get people involved in the positive aspects of that. Sometimes people tend to go the other route, but we always look at the positive and look at our successes and continue those successes.
Well, let's go ahead and start moving forward, and we'll talk about the things that I think our friends out there want to talk about, and probably one of the first things we should talk about is the weather that we had in January in particular, and the number of days that you really had your hands tied. You had to close the schools on those days.
It's always, they're called calamity days, and it's always interesting because you're either a hero or an idiot depending on the point of view of the person, and everybody always says, well, such and such closed, and that district closed, and that district closed. What is interesting, and you may or may not know, is the superintendents of Lorain County, of which there's quite a few of us, we are on emails and converse pretty regularly, starting about 5, 6 o'clock at night, sometimes all the way through the night, on deciding what we want to do. There's a number of considerations which people have asked me about. For some districts that are in the counties that have county roads, their big thing more than anything else is the blowing snow and not being able to see down the roads, and for that. The cold isn't quite as much of an issue for those students because they walk down to the end of their driveway or they walk at a certain point and get on a bus and they can get to school. We're in the city, so our issues are not so much necessarily the snow, because usually our roads are clear and we can usually get through. And the only issue we have to deal with is if the snow comes late. If it comes 4 in the morning, 5 in the morning, 6 in the morning, then we're stuck, or there's drifting snow, because the city's pretty good about getting it clean. Our big concern, of course, is the cold. When you get these frigid cold, our students are walking to school. We have a large number that are walking, so we have to be very, very concerned about that. So there's different. So we may be closed when another one's open, and those of you that live in this county also know that if you're on the lake, and I don't live too far from the lake, it could be 10 to 15 degrees difference between the lake and what's at the mall or what's in Elyria, and that's a big factor, because sometimes our lake districts have a little different challenge than other districts. So you make the best call you can, and as I said, I was on the local TV stations, and it's very, very difficult because you're affecting 7,000 students' lives and you're affecting 1,000 employees' lives, and that means you have to get babysitters or whatever adjustments you have to make. I don't take it lightly, and I don't remember Lorain schools closing for more than 5 days in 40 years. Last year we closed one day, and it was for a hurricane, actually, if everybody remembers the hurricane day. But prior to that, we haven't closed much. This is extremely unusual.
Well, so there you have it. All of that work in the last couple weeks here with the bad weather that we've been experiencing, the vortices, I suppose, that have blown through. Speaking of other things that have blown through and challenges for you and the rest of not only your administration, but the teachers and the support staff and the students and the community as a whole. I'm looking at this academic recovery plan, which is a pretty healthy little document. Wanted to touch base with you about that plan and kind of how it was formed. Let's start with that, and maybe talk a little bit about the implementation and where we are in terms of that plan. Under Ohio Revised Code, again, this is all part of law, when a district got into academic emergency, and there's a couple other areas in there, when they hit that mark, then an academic distress commission is formed in the district. Now that law also changed because they changed the legislature on that, because we're going away from academic emergency and we're going to A, B, C, D, F for grade cards. That changed. That law changed about 1 week after we said we were going to be in the Academic Distress Commission. Yes, so it's a real challenging area. Prior to my arrival in Lorain, it's the test scores from the previous year is what it was. Okay. So the year before I arrived, those test scores that particular year, we hit academic emergency. Now, if you remember, in the normal course of events, those test scores come out and the state rankings come out in August. But that particular year, if you remember, there was a state investigation on data scrubbing and also grade changes. Right. So that was all delayed until February. So we would have been notified in August, and we probably would have gotten off on a start around September or October. But because of that delay of that data scrubbing, we didn't get notified till March, and the commission wasn't really formed till May, because there's appointees. There's 5 people on the commission. It has been reported in the local papers. 3 of them are appointed by the state superintendent. 2 are appointed by the school board president. We have had all those people appointed. They started their work in May and June, and we met 40 to 50 hours throughout the summer, and they came up with an academic plan. Now, when I arrived here, we drew up our own academic plan on how to improve the district's academics. And they took a real hard look at that, and they incorporated a lot of that, because I had to put something in place. I couldn't wait for them, because you plan in the spring, start implementing in the summer, so it's ready for the fall. And because of the timing for the commission, they started their work in May and June, and they had to get all the information before they could put the plan together. It was completed in August. It then is sent down to the Ohio Department of Education. The state superintendent approves it, and he approved it sometime in September. But we were already started in school. Right. But knowing what was in the plan and knowing what a good educational plan is, we went ahead and started, and it aligned very well. That particular plan is being implemented as we go. It's a comprehensive plan. It's going to be a 4 or 5 year plan. You can't make some changes you can make quickly, but most of them you cannot. It takes quite a while. With that, then, we also have the 3rd grade reading guarantee, which came at the same time as our academic plan, and the changing of the report cards, which we had to deal with at the same time, and the new teacher evaluation and principal evaluation system. That all happened within a period of 4 or 5 months for implementation. Major changes in education, and we implemented Ohio's new content standards, which is commonly known as the Common Core. So that's all within last summer. Welcome to your first year in Lorain, right?
That's right.
First year back in Lorain. I should be clear about that. Mr. Tucker, I mean, let's kind of break some of this down. I know that you're intimately familiar with this document, and I think anybody that is concerned about your schools probably ought to go online. It's available.
It's online.
Readily available. So really encourage everybody to go out and pick it up, take a look at it, print it off. 25 pages?
About 25 pages,
something like that.
Pages.
Interesting, as I went through it, it was all very objective based. It is, this is going to happen, this is going to happen, this is going to happen. And as you kind of, you walk through the document and you start taking a look at it, long-term goals, annual goals. But you're talking, when you're talking long-term, and I want to go back and touch on that again, long-term 4 to 5 years.
Correct.
To see some of this happen. Now, the measurement part of that, how are we tracking that?
There's a number of things that happen in the particular plan. There are priorities, and each priority, the Ohio Department of Education came in last March and April, and did an assessment of the district. Okay. And of that assessment, which was reported on publicly, and,
sure.
and had a number of things there, but they came up. The commission then, and I sat on in the meetings, came up with 3 priorities. One priority being school climate. Priority 2, of course, is the kindergarten through 3rd grade literacy, which is very crucial. The 3rd priority was the rigorous, relevant curriculum and instruction, which is part of the new content standards. The priority 4 was the student and staff attendance, and priority 5 was the financial support of the academic achievement. Under all that, there were strategies and things in place that had to happen. On those, then, we developed basically a grid on what we are going to report to the commission. Some things you can report, like for instance, on a climate and culture. Some of these or attendance you can report monthly. That's very easy to track. It's very simple. Finances, that's very easy to track. That's simple to track. Other things such as testing, we only give high stakes tests once a year, so that's only going to be reported once a year. The benchmark tests which we're giving, those are reported on a quarterly basis. We have other testing amount, or some of the literacy tests are on an annual basis. Some of them are on a bi-monthly basis. In addition to that, then what they want to know is, okay, if this is the case, for instance, in our reading, 30% of our students are not reading on grade level. What are you doing about it, and what is occurring? What we've done is changed our reading program. We've also put in tiered reading programs for the students that are struggling. We call them Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. That's what they call them. Okay. Tier 3 are students that are very far behind, and they need intensive study, different programming. Tier 2 are kids that are a little bit behind, and Tier 1 are ones that are pretty much on track for that. So depending on what we have to report, some are monthly, some are bi-monthly, some are quarterly, and some are annually, and some are semi-annually.
No, when you look at this, and one of the things that kind of popped out at me, and I even highlighted it when I went through the document as a whole, alignment of curriculum. And what popped out to me about that is, we can sit and look at a book and come up with a curriculum that says, okay, this is what you do. But teaching is as much an art as it is a science, to be sure. You've got teachers who are professionals who have been doing this for years and were very competent in those that set of abilities. That's got to be at least a little bit of a rub. Let me do my best to teach, but I've got to teach to this curriculum.
What is interesting is we've always had curriculums to teach to, and in the past, what the curriculums that were developed were either you bought the textbook and you taught the textbook, and what people may not know is textbooks are really developed for 2 states, because there's only 2 states that adopt a statewide textbook. So, and that's been that way for many, many years. So the textbooks are not necessarily, quote, aligned to what the state tests are. So we went to the Ohio content standards in the late 90s, early 2000s, and then the tests were based upon those content standards. Those textbooks were not aligned. 10, 15 years ago, we did a study, and they saw that some of these textbooks were only aligned for 50 to 60% of what they need to know on the test. But you shouldn't just be teaching out of a book. You need to add other things. So when you talk about alignment, you just say it can't just be that textbook. It has to be other things. And that textbook is written by a company who has a specific thing that they want you to know. So you have to align the curriculum. What that means is you have content standards that everyone agrees that students should know, and those content standards then are what needs to be taught. If the majority of them are out of a textbook, that's great. Is there other supplementary material that we need to use for that? And the other thing is, as part of that alignment, is a pacing guide. With our students being very mobile around the district, we have a 30% mobility rate at times. They need to, if they go to another school or they come back to that school, they can go, oh, I know where we are. This is within a week of where we were at. Okay. We all can remember that teacher that, and I had one, where we had Civil War, and he liked the Civil War, so guess what? We did 9 weeks of the Civil War. I never knew World War I and World War II happened because we never got to it in class.
Okay.
Because he liked
Right.
the Civil War. Those things can't happen anymore because there was no high stakes testing when I went to school. So if I would have probably not done well on the World War I, World War II, Jack Kennedy, the new frontier, or any of that. So that prevents a lot of that, and I'm sure we all have those stories. Now, are you teaching to the test? To some degree, the answer is yes, but haven't we always taught to the test?
True.
When I was in school, it was, is this going to be on the test? And if the teacher said yes, then I studied it. If it wasn't, I didn't study it.
And it's even more vital now. I mean, because things have become standardized, and I mean, if you don't teach that information, life's going to get a little worse for everybody involved in the equation.
Absolutely, and a lot of it is the big question for everybody is it's all on a test that takes place over 1 week, and it needs to be a body of work of what the students
Agreed.
do over a long period of time, not just 1 week in April or 1 week in March.
Agreed. You know, one of the other things, and you just mentioned this a couple minutes ago, in terms of climate and culture in the schools, attendance, participation. Boy, that's a tough nut.
Actually, we've put a lot of effort on our attendance, both staff and students. And prior to these calamity days, our attendance at some of our elementary schools were up 96%, 97%.
That's phenomenal.
It is phenomenal. We are meeting our state goal this year through the middle of January. We are on our state goal for the first time in a while. And that has been a major effort. We've partnered with the court system. We've partnered with some other folks to try to get our students to come to school, because if they're not there, we can't teach them. One of our challenges now, of course, is the high school being in the south side of town. The majority of our kids come from the east and west side of town. That's just something we have to work through till we get our new high school built. But our attendance and our staff attendance is up, and it's been very good. Now we've got calamity days and snow days. We'll work through those, but eventually spring will come.
And you mentioned the new high school. That is something we're going to talk about on Supe Talk down the road a little bit. There's some things that are going to happen over the next several weeks, and once we kind of know where everything's going with that's certainly one of the things that will bring you our viewing audience. So you know, going back to this, another really ambitious goal. I liked this one a lot, and I kind of got excited. I smiled when I saw this one. Increase 4-year graduation rate by 13%. That's number one. That's a lot of work to do. But number two, that's kind of the bottom line. People need that piece of paper now more than ever, I think, to be successful moving down the line.
And that doesn't start in high school. You know, a lot of people go, well, what do you do in your senior year? That just didn't happen when you were 17. And the key to that is our preschool, which we've expanded preschools this year. We've added another 100 students coming to our preschool, and we're working on our reading program, because if you look, the key to the reading, if students can read, their chances of graduating are huge. The other big piece of that is what they call the transitional years. Our transitional years currently are 6th to 7th grade, and 8th to 9th grade, because those are the years that there's big changes going on. And we've put an AVID program in place in 9th grade, which helps students through some of these transitions, because if you get through your freshman year, your odds of graduating are huge. And then also credit recovery for our students that aren't quite on track with the credit recovery. But the reading piece is the big one.
We'll talk a little bit more about credit recovery as well. I think the perception generally is that's kind of where you push the kids that are giving you problems otherwise, but that's really not the case. It's where you're putting kids that need that intensity that you may have spoken about before, a little bit more help, getting where they need to be, and it's not a permanent placement.
No, in fact, the rules have changed so much. When a lot of us went to school, and I keep saying that because people can relate to that, you had to graduate with 17 or 18 credits. It's up to 20-some credits.
Wow.
So you could make up a lot of things. When I went to school, you needed 1 math class, you needed 4 English classes, you needed 2 science classes. That's all different now. You need a lot more. So when a student falls behind, if you missed a math class, you had 4 years to make that up before you graduated. Now you need 3 years of math. You need algebra too. So it's a little bit different. So it's a matter of, if you're credit deficient, you have got to be able to catch up. And the school is not really set up to retake that class, because you have to take the next class. So we have a credit recovery program, and that students can make that up. And a lot of times they may have done well for 9 weeks. They just didn't get the last 9 weeks or the middle 9 weeks or something. So it's to make up what they know. It's not a matter of I'm sure we've all sat in classes where you go, I can't believe I'm sitting in this class. I already know this stuff. Now it's if the students know it, move on, graduate early, take college level courses. So the credit recovery is an area for students to catch up, and the goal is to get them back to the high school as quickly and rapidly so they can be successful.
Now, as I hear you talking about this today, I guess the thing that kind of comes to mind right now is the fact that, and you kind of mentioned the transition pieces and the groups. You're putting this overall plan together, but I would imagine that there are probably 3 or 4 plans within that to address, the folks that are sophomore, juniors, and seniors right now versus those transition students versus those ones. They're going to have the benefit of all the changes and the progress that's made.
And it's crucial to work with the students to make sure that they're successful and identify them early enough when they're struggling to get them through that, rather than let them languish until January or February, and then wow, the students got some challenges ahead that we need to work with them. And the identification is a big part of that. And that right now we have a 9th grade standalone building. We're doing the best we can with it. It's not ideal. The 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th grade building is better, but that's coming. But with some of the programs we do have in place at that 9th grade building to identify those students that may need some additional work, we're hoping to have some success.
Before we kind of move on from this, and we talk a lot, and there's a lot of attention paid to those students that are struggling. It's an important piece of the equation. You also get to deal with the folks that are kind of in that middle section that are just doing what's expected of them and are going to have good success. And you've got some folks that are planning for college and moving down in terms of additional education down the road. More challenges, but you're kind of handling those fairly well as well.
Well, what we're looking at is expanding our gifted program. We've brought some people in to talk to us about model gifted, and we sent some folks out to other districts. And what is a new model or a better model to serve a lot of those students? The more students we get identified as gifted, the better we are to challenge those students. And it just doesn't mean you're gifted, you get to do more problems. You get to go more in depth and do more exciting programming. And we need to expand that across the district. We recognize that, and that's an area that we've taken charge of. One area that we have expanded on that already is a Titan College, where the students can earn college credits and actually get an associate's degree if they so choose, right at the high school. And that's part of the whole gifted program. And the key is to get students into that. Once again, that doesn't start at 9th grade. That starts down. We get them identified. And just because you're gifted in one area doesn't necessarily mean you're gifted in another. But still, you need those challenges, and we need to identify those students to make sure that they have things to do.
What's that identification process look like? I mean, I can't imagine that there's just some test that everybody gets and it tells you where you are, or is it that easy?
Actually, the state defines what it is, and there are tests that are given. The parents can request that, teachers can request that to get the services for the students. But it's set by the state, and it's by the Gifted Association, so there's a very prescriptive way to do that.
I've learned something. I've learned a lot today, but I was certainly kind of off base on that. Well, Mr. Tucker, I tell you what, we've covered some pretty good ground today, and I don't want to kind of run this into the ground, so to speak. But again, I want to thank you for being willing to step up and do this on camera, and everyone will have the opportunity to take a look at it on WLCS. So first, again, thank you, and want to remind everybody that you're going to have opportunities to pose questions to the man, and we'll take those on. We're going to set up an email address, right?
That's correct. We are setting it up. It's called Supe Talk, SUPETALK, at Lorain.K12.OH.US.
Okay, and you should be able to see that at the bottom of the screen. We'll have that for you. Feel free to write anytime. We'll take your questions. I'm not going to promise that we'll answer all of them, but we'll certainly bring those in and help to focus the show and develop the show as we move on. Mr. Tucker, thank you so much.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Appreciate it as well. For Joe Bach, our producer here on WLCS TV 20, I'm Don Vincent. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you another time right here on Supe Talk.
This has been a production of Lorain City Schools, TV 20 WLCS.
To purchase a high-quality copy of the program you just viewed, please call Lorain City Schools Television at 282-8400.